you're walking through a familiar hallway, but something feels wrong. The light buzz a little too loudly. The wall seems closer than they should be. It doesn't make sense, but the feeling passes. You brush it off. But what if it's not just in your head? What if those moments are something else? In 1996, a man in Ogden, Utah was caught on security footage walking into a fenced alley. He never came out. He just vanished. When he reappeared hours later, he could only whisper one phrase. The lights wouldn't stop. I walked forever. 5 years later, he vanished again. His last online search? A desperate question about being trapped in a place that wasn't real. This isn't fiction. This is the Backroom Archive. And what you're about to see will make you question every hallway you've ever walked down. On July 17th, 1996, 22-year-old Micah Jansen finished his usual 10-hour night shift at a distribution warehouse in Ogden, Utah. It was just after 3 in the morning, and he was headed home on foot. His route was simple: 2 residential blocks, then a fenced alleyway that cut behind a deserted shopping center. At 3:12 a.m., a security camera mounted above a loading dock picked up clear footage of Micah entering the alley. He just walked straight in and never came out. The alley had no other exits. It was boxed in on all sides, chain link fencing on one side, a concrete wall on the other, and no doors or pathways hidden in the footage. When police reviewed the video, they were sure Micah must have turned around or ducked out of frame. But he didn't. He walked into the middle of the frame, and then simply wasn't there anymore. For 4 hours, no one saw or heard from him, until at exactly 7:11 a.m., he showed up on his front porch. But something was wrong. Micah had no shoes. His jacket was gone. His hands were scraped raw, and his clothes were soaked in sweat. According to his roommate, he just stood at the door for almost a full minute, staring at the house like he didn't recognize it. Then, in a shaky voice, he said,
"The lights wouldn't stop. I walked forever. Everything buzzed."
The words didn't make sense at the time. His roommate called an ambulance, and Micah was rushed to McCady Hospital, where doctors ran every test they could. Everything came back normal. No drugs, no alcohol, no brain trauma, no mental illness. According to the scans, Micah was physically fine, but emotionally, he wasn't. He flinched at the overhead lights and kept scanning the corners of the room, as if something might be hiding just out of view. When a nurse asked what he'd seen, he only replied, "It wasn't a dream. I remember the smell." He never explained what the smell was, and after that, he refused to talk about it again. In 2001, Micah relocated to a small remote town in Alaska. He kept to himself and eventually stopped responding to messages from friends and family. Then, 5 months later, he vanished once more. This time, there was no footage, no witness accounts, no trace of where he'd gone. The only clue left behind was a browser history entry from a public library computer, time-stamped just hours before his disappearance. If it had stopped there, we might have written Micah off as a troubled young man with undiagnosed issues. But it didn't stop, because others, from other countries, other decades, had said almost the same thing. In 1955, a 37-year-old architect named Daniel Weiss was found by university maintenance crews in a tunnel system underneath the Harvard Peabody Museum. He'd been missing for nearly a week. Weiss was dehydrated and barefoot. When police questioned him, he said he'd been trapped in a building with no doors, no windows, just yellow walls that hummed. He was admitted to the Massachusetts Mental Health Center for observation under the care of Dr. Howard Stein, a research psychiatrist known for his work on perceptual distortion disorders. Weiss told Stein that he had found a stairwell behind a janitor's closet, one he didn't remember being there before. When he stepped into it, everything went quiet. He wandered for what he believed was 4, maybe 5 days. But security logs showed that he had only been missing for 33 hours. Stein was skeptical until Weiss began sketching what he saw. His diagrams showed rooms that made no structural sense, a hallway that looped into itself, a stairwell that spiraled horizontally, angles that bent space in ways Euclidean geometry couldn't explain. Stein wrote in his notes, "This isn't imagination, it's architectural, and wrong." Weiss was later transferred to a long-term care center in Connecticut. His drawings, marked in a file labeled SPC Delta 3, were stored in the hospital's private archive. The file was quietly removed in 1981 and never recovered. Over the decades, stories like Micah's and Daniel's would surface sporadically. People who vanished for hours or days, then came back disoriented, rambling about buzzing lights, endless hallways, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. In 1972, a Canadian truck driver named Ellis Boudreau pulled over to rest along a stretch of road near Regina, Saskatchewan. His logbook showed he stopped at 1:45 a.m. The next entry wasn't until 3:30 p.m. the following day. He'd missed a scheduled delivery and was found walking barefoot along a service road, bleeding from his knuckles, muttering in French about rows of lights that never stop buzzing and doors that lead back to the same room. In 2003, a Japanese urban explorer posted a short video to a now-defunct forum. It starts in an abandoned office building. He enters a hallway with yellow wallpaper. The lights begin to flicker. The camera shakes. He whispers something in Japanese, translated as, "I think I went the wrong way." Then it cuts to static. The uploader's account was deactivated 48 hours later. And in 2010, a US Army private was separated from his unit during a nighttime patrol near an abandoned village. He was missing for 6 hours before being found unconscious at the base of a dried-out riverbed. Upon waking, he described falling through a hole that shouldn't have been there, landing in what he believed was an old NATO bunker. But the rooms were wrong. No markings, no equipment, just moist, humming silence and yellow walls. The Army classified it as heat stroke-induced hallucinations. But fellow soldiers noted something strange. His boots were brand new that morning. When found, they looked waterlogged and moldy. These incidents were scattered, unconnected, until researchers stumbled on something buried deeper, a name, a theory, a vanished doctor. In 1987, a little-known neurologist in Poland, Dr. Elias Kotke, published a strange paper that most people have never heard of. At the time, Kotke was a respected brain researcher. He taught at the University of Gdansk and specialized in how the brain understands space in physical surroundings. But in his final paper, he made a claim so bizarre it destroyed his career. Kotke studied 17 patients from 5 different countries. These people didn't know each other. They had nothing in common. But every single one described the same thing. being trapped in a place that didn't feel real. No windows, no exits, just endless yellow rooms and a constant electrical hum. And it wasn't just what they saw. They described the same smells, the same cold, buzzing feeling, a strange static in the air, a pressure behind their eyes. And then suddenly they were somewhere else. One patient said it felt like falling sideways into a room that wasn't there. Another wrote, "I thought I was still in the hospital, but every hallway turned into more of the same. The walls were breathing." Kotke called this phenomenon the configuration. He believed that under rare conditions, like flickering lights, repetitive architecture, or low-frequency sound, a person's brain could sort of slip. Not into a dream, but into a real space that exists alongside our own. A place not bound by time, logic, or physics. Kotke wrote that the configuration is not a dream. It is an entry point, a structural anomaly that exists adjacent to our perceived space. But just 2 weeks after the paper came out, it was pulled from publication. Kotke was ridiculed by the academic world. Most said he'd lost his mind. Months later, a fire broke out in his lab. Investigators said it was caused by faulty wiring. But strangely, only one room was damaged: his private archive. Days later, Dr. Kotke disappeared. Some say he fled the country. Others believe he never made it out of that fire. But nearly 30 years later, one final document was found in the basement of the university. It had Kotke's sketches, his notes, and one sentence written over and over again in his handwriting. "The configuration is not a dream, it is an entry." In recent years, this place, whether dream, delusion, or dimension, has taken on a new name: the Backrooms. The term appeared online in 2019, attached to a blurry, low-resolution image posted on an anonymous forum. It showed nothing remarkable, just a yellow hallway with stained carpet and buzzing lights. But something about it struck a nerve. People didn't say, "That's creepy." They said, "I've seen this." Not in a dream, but in memory. Users from around the world, different languages, different backgrounds, started sharing eerily similar experiences. They described the same layout, the same hum in the air, the same strange sense of being watched. Some described a hallway that always bends right. Others mentioned a room where the lights never fully turn off. A few talked about a spot where the buzzing suddenly stops. And in that silence, you feel like you're not alone. One Reddit user, whose post has since been deleted, claimed that on 3 separate occasions during lucid dreams, he returned to the exact same location in the backrooms, down to a cracked electrical panel marked B5. On his 3rd visit, he said he found a journal hidden behind a ceiling tile. Inside were shaky handwritten notes. The final entry read, "If you're reading this, then maybe you made it. I've been here for 6 days. My name was Daniel Weiss." The post was flagged as fiction, but within 48 hours, the account was deleted. When other users tried to check the photo's metadata, they found nothing. A year later, a maintenance worker at an office building in downtown Salt Lake City discovered a hidden corridor behind a fake HVAC panel. He joked that it looked like the Backrooms. Yellow walls, stained carpet, buzzing lights, and walked in to take a few photos. After about 7 minutes, he noticed something strange. The signs on the walls were repeating. Each one read, "Level B, exit this way," over and over. He turned around to leave, but the signs didn't change. He started running. Eventually, he found a door that led him back into the stairwell. He reported it to his supervisor, but when he returned the next day, the corridor was gone. It was as if it had never existed. Maybe the backrooms aren't something we discover. Maybe there's something we remember, something we all visited once, and were lucky enough to forget. But every once in a while, someone finds the door again. And when they step through, they don't always come back. But one man did come back, and he brought something with him. In 2003, a firefighter in rural British Columbia was pulled from a collapsed tunnel after being missing for over 13 hours underground. His rescue team found him curled up in a space barely large enough to crawl through, muttering nonsense about too many doors and things that shouldn't smile. When he was finally able to speak clearly, he gave investigators a single hand-drawn map. It showed a crude looping structure made of square rooms and something labeled only as Level 0. That map and the recording they recovered from his helmet cam is what we'll look at in the next episode.